How to lose weight fast with the carnivore diet. Hey, what's shaking bacon? My name's Bruno Panucci. I hope you're doing well. So I've been doing the carnivore diet very strictly for almost 3 years, and I was doing it on and off for a few years before that. And a few years before that, I did zero carb. So zero carb eating is a little different than carnivore. So I was still having extremely low carb foods and like aspartame in my diet and things along those lines. And it was a different feeling than when I went carnivore. Going carnivore made me feel better, and feeling better meant my health was getting better. When my health was getting better, at that point, I was started to lose weight. Losing weight is a byproduct of your body getting healthier. So the goal on a carnivore diet, lots of people come to a carnivore diet for a variety of reasons. Usually it's for better health for one reason or another. Sometimes it's to manage inflammation. Sometimes it's to manage weight. But typically what's happening when you're overweight is your body is inflamed and your inflammation markers are higher. So what we want to do on a carnivore diet, it's like an ultimate elimination diet. And I've lost over 160 pounds doing this way of eating. So I can help you through my trials and errors get there a little sooner than I did. And one of the ultimate goals is to manage your inflammation, and lowering your carbohydrates in your diet and ideally getting rid of the carbohydrates in your diet is a great way to do that. Carbohydrates are really what's triggering inflammation in the body. Yes, there's some other things that we might have to address later on, but typically once you get that under control, everything else starts to get better. And as your metabolic health starts to return, you have more metabolic flexibility. And when you have that metabolic flexibility, everything else just gets easier. So one of the first things you have to do is acknowledge, are you an abstainer or a moderator? Can you have one cookie every single day? Can you have one spoonful of ice cream every single day? Can you have one bite of pizza and not crave it afterwards, not have it rule your life afterwards? If you can do that, then you're probably a moderator and you're in a good place, assuming you're being honest with yourself. If you can't cut that food out without obsessing over and going through physical withdrawals, you're at a whole other level and you're probably an abstainer. That's where I am. It took me years to learn that I was an abstainer, and it took me years longer to really appreciate the depth of that addiction that I had. And once I did, I was able to move forward. So along with that sugar and carbohydrate addiction came binge eating. I was addicted to being full. I was addicted to always making every meal like it was my last meal. If I had ice cream, I had a ton of ice cream. If I had pizza, I had a ton of pizza. If I ate at a restaurant, every meal was just a huge portion of usually very unhealthy carb-loaded food. So carbs are typically high in fruits and vegetables. So carbs are often breads, pastas, rice, potatoes, and those are usually the cornerstone of our meals with some vegetables on the side. And even if you're having vegetables on the side, that's still carbohydrates. What proteins are in there aren't really bioavailable for you to digest very well. Fruit is another issue because that's high in sugar. Yes, the fiber helps slow that sugar absorption down, but it's still sugar. If you're overweight, your body's not processing sugar and carbs very well. It's really what it comes down to. So what you want to do is knock that out to restore your metabolic health, restore your inflammation markers back down to where they should be. And keep in mind, it usually revolves around managing your insulin. Chronically high insulin is a source of inflammation in the body, and we want to try and manage that. So by cutting all those foods out, including nuts and seeds, we're down to just protein and fat. We've knocked out carbohydrates. Now, when you cut down to just protein and fat, you have to increase the fat. Simple as that. Fat is your other fuel source. So now that we're down to just two fuel sources, proteins and fats, keep in mind protein isn't the best fuel source. It's more of a building block. So fat becomes our main fuel source. So just doing all this that we just talked about is going to benefit the vast majority of people who try carnivore. Not only are you going to feel better, you're going to have better energy. You're not going to have mood dysregulation. You're not going to have energy dysregulation. You're going to feel even Steven all day long. It's going to be a nice feeling. Now, the tough part is committing to that. The first week or so, you're going to go through some physical withdrawals. The next 2 to 3 weeks, you're going to go through some of the more psychological withdrawals. And that's often when people will give in. It's the tricky part. A few weeks later, probably up until about the 3 to 6 month mark, is when you start to have to fight with yourself. And we're getting into the holiday season. The problem with the holiday season is you start making excuses for yourself. That's your addiction talking. That's your body saying, what's one bite gonna hurt? What's one meal gonna hurt? And you're gonna find out very quickly at that point how bad you got it, because you might have that one meal. And let's say afterwards you don't have any cravings for food the next day and you think, that wasn't too bad. I'm going to try it again. And so you think, I'm going to try it the next week or in a few days. That's where the addiction gets you. You think you're on steady ground, but really you're on a slippery slope. And you don't realize till you slid all the way down it and you think, oh man, I've totally lost control. And all that work I did to get to that point of getting over the physical withdrawals, the psychological withdrawals of these binge eating episodes, or just the sugar and carbohydrate withdrawal that I went through is now something I have to do all over again. That's what I did on and off for years. And I'm trying to prevent you from going down that road because the holiday season is coming upon us. So your goal is to manage your blood sugar and your insulin. Usually, managing your blood sugar will help manage your insulin. Now, there are some people like myself, where even though my blood sugar gets managed on a carnivore diet, my insulin still stays high. My fasting insulin is chronically high, and I've worked towards lowering it, but it's still too high, which shows there's probably some liver or pancreas issues that are still going on where those organs need to be healed. And that's unfortunately going to take some time. If you have a history of yo-yo dieting, you've been overweight a really long time, then there's going to be more to heal, and it might take longer. But if you're in your 20s, 30s, or 40s, there's a good chance you can turn this around, especially if you haven't had that history like I have. The next thing you want to try and do is balance your protein and fat. If you notice you're getting diarrhea a lot in the beginning of this way of eating, well, you might want to cut back a little bit on salt, or you might want to cut back a little bit on the fat and make sure you're eating leaner foods only in the beginning, because typically you want this to be a high fat version of carnivore that you're doing. You usually want to keep about ballpark 80% of your calories from fat. And that's when you know you're doing well. When you find your happy medium, you don't need to have a bowel movement every day, but every second or third day or fourth day, as long as you're not bloated, it shows that your body's just using all that fuel. If your waistline is getting bigger and bigger by the day, then you have to worry about bloating and why maybe you might be backed up. But typically that's not a problem. I've never really heard of anyone doing a carnivore diet where they just bloat and bloat and bloat. Usually what happens is they de-bloat. And what's naturally going to happen the longer you do a carnivore diet is you're going to stop with your negative relationships with food. If you've been binge eating or you've had a sweet tooth and you've never been able to have balance, this is what's going to be restored to you over the weeks and months ahead. So doing a carnivore diet is one of the best things you can do to help manage your weight, because you're managing your health, you're managing your blood sugar and managing your fasting insulin. Your fasting insulin that causes chronic inflammation is kind of aggravating everything else in your body, and you let that die down and everything else will start to heal. And that's the goal. That's what you want. If you're looking for further help, I highly recommend going to a carnivore coach. Kelly Hogan does carnivore coaching, and you can find her on Instagram, Kelly Hogan 91. She's a 14-year carnivore coming up to her 14th anniversary, and she has a lot of experience. She's been strict carnivore for all those years, and not a lick, taste, or bite of anything off a carnivore diet. That's my motto, not a lick, taste, or bite of anything off a carnivore diet. You have to get out of this screwy mindset that it's a holiday or a treat or it's Christmas morning or your child said, here, please take this. You'll really enjoy it. You're not going to get anywhere if you're an abstainer and you're dealing with those cravings, because that's what you're doing. You're really giving into cravings. So anyway, I want you to keep all these things in mind. This will give most people rapid weight loss, and you start adding exercise onto that, and then you have a great mixture, the best of both worlds. We'll get into that in another video. Anyway, thanks a lot and take care.